If somebody's walking down the street with blue hair, what an awful person that is.
What does science say on consciousness?
How do we quieten the mind if there's going to be a dispute?
Is there any way that we train these senses?
We close our eyes when we do meditation.
Lamaji, very good evening. Lamaji, you are muted, I guess.
That's true. Good evening. It's a good start.
Yes, of course. Do you like the name Lamaji, or you were given no choice?
I've been called worse things than Lamaji. Lamaji is
fine. Okay. So we will keep Lamaji. So welcome everyone. And today we are going to discuss about human consciousness. This is our third session. The first session we had on mind stimulations and neurogenesis and some weird yet simple habits to keep those brain cells active. And the second session we had was on importance of accepting death. And today it's the third session where we will talk about the 8 human consciousness. This is the part 1 of the third episode. Today we will talk about seven human consciousness. I will start with a beautiful quote which goes like, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. And this is where we are going to discuss these, topic, like why we do things the way we do, how do we react to things, what's the role of our senses and consciousness in our day-to-day lives, our perception, our actions, and the interrelations between all these activities. So, Lamaji, since we are going to discuss today the 7 out of 8 human consciousness, we would like you to give the platform and to guide us that what are these 7 consciousness which we will talk about, which sets the base for the 8th consciousness.
Yeah, so what Carl Jung was saying there when he said that trying to make the unconscious conscious, he was talking about this is about understanding. One way of doing this is understanding different types of consciousness. Of course, another way is meditation or being mindful or doing reflection practice. But the starting point has to be to understand our consciousness. So today what I'm going to teach is from the Yogacara school of Buddhism, and they believe we have 8 consciousness. So there are many scholars in modern Buddhism that don't follow this 8 consciousness now. But for me, I've always found that it's, been logical. So, and I believe that, if we can understand, if we want to understand our mind and the way the mind works, then, we have to understand about consciousness. So the Yogacara school, which is also known as Chittamatra school, or it's known as the mind-only school. So many scholars misunderstand what this school is saying, and they believe that what they're saying is that there's nothing but consciousness, and this consciousness is permanent. So they are not saying that. I mean, nothing is permanent, and they're not saying that there's only consciousness. What they're saying is that there is nothing conscious. So consciousness, let me just try to word this better. They tell us that we don't know anything that is not facilitated by our consciousness. And, if you look at it, that's true. We see, we hear, we taste, we touch, and we smell the world. That's how we contact with the outside world. That is the only way that we contact with the outside world. So it means that your eye consciousness, your ear consciousness, etc., is the way that we can facilitate the outside world. So we're not saying that there is only consciousness, but we're saying that whatever you come into contact with touches your consciousness. So there are two layers to this. Then today we'll be looking at mainly the surface consciousness. So there's two layers of surface consciousness, which include the six main consciousnesses, and then there's the deep consciousness, and that deep consciousness is where we get the seventh and eighth consciousness. So let's look at the six consciousness. So these are our sense consciousnesses. So we understand these. It's sight, it's smell, it's hearing, it's taste, and it's touch. But in Buddhism, we also put mind as a sense organ, because what you think, what you feel, those emotions, your perceptions, your biases, all go to flavor the way you see the outside world. So every object of perception enters through our consciousness into our sensory contact. So we say that things are broken down into three parts. So it's the sense organ. So first of all, you have your sense organ, which is like your eyes, your ears, your nose, your tongue, your body, and your mind. Then there's the sense object. So it might be a smell, it might be a sound, it might be an actual object that you're looking at. And then finally, there's our experience of that. And our experience comes through the eye consciousness or the ear consciousness, etc. So there's an outside object, then there's the sense organs. So we need to understand that those sense organs just pick things up. There is no memory in your eyes and your ears and your nose. When you see something, it isn't your eye that is telling you that's a dog or that's a mug or that's a table. It's actually your eye consciousness. So we have the outside objects, then we have the our sensory sense organs, and then we have our internal consciousness, which gives us the experience. So your eye consciousness, your ear consciousness. So the second most powerful of these is the eye consciousness. And one of the reasons that we close our eyes when we do meditation is because that eye consciousness is so powerful that if something moves in your vision, you'll lose your sense of meditation. You'll be thinking, oh, what is that? So your second most powerful sense organ we have is the eye consciousness. But the most powerful is our mind. And the mind consciousness is responsible for our thinking, our creativity, our making plans. But it's also responsible for anxiety, stress, and so forth. And you know that the brain, the mind, it takes a lot of our energy, the energy that we take from our food, a lot of it goes to run our brain or our mind. So mindfulness these days has become a little bit of a buzzword and, just take one breath and things like that. But actually mindfulness can keep us obviously in the present moment, and it allows our mind consciousness to relax a little bit because it stops us from worrying about what's happened in the past or trying to predict what is going to happen in the future. So mindfulness is not just about coming back to the present moment and breathing, and it's also going to help save energy. So these are the six surface consciousnesses, and I think we all can clearly understand those six. I don't think anybody would dispute that. Maybe if there's going to be a dispute, it will be about the sixth consciousness, but I think, that's pretty clear. So I just want to, before I throw it open to questions, I want to talk about the seventh consciousness. Now, we will get to the most important one, which is the eighth consciousness, which, if you have opportunity to join, then join that one, because that is one of the most important things to learn about. So the seventh consciousness is the consciousness for our sense of self consciousness, or you could call it ego. And this consciousness believes in a separate self. It believes in an individual, autonomous person. It believes in a soul. And in Buddhism, we don't believe in souls, but that's another session for another day. But this sense of self-consciousness is what causes us to get upset when somebody says something to us. And then we think, oh, how dare they talk to me like that? Or don't they know who I am? It is because it's being filtered through that sense of self-consciousness. So this view is not stemming from mind consciousness. So a lot of people think that this sense of a self that we have, this sense of a person, that this is me, this is who I am. I'm a autonomous, independent person. People think that's coming from the mind, but actually it isn't. It's coming from your sense of the seventh consciousness there. So this consciousness creates a sense that our body is who we are. Our thoughts are who we are, or our perceptions, our experiences, our emotions are who we are. That consciousness splits the world into two. So it splits it into everything that's inside of me and everything outside of me. So if it's outside, it's nothing to do with me. If it's inside, within your skin, then it's to do with you. But you see, this is a dangerous thing. Everything that we take in through our six consciousnesses gets filtered through that seventh consciousness. And you see, that is why we're always looking at how is something going to affect me? What is that actually going to mean for me? And how am I going to gain from this? We're always looking selfishly. Even if, I ask you, are you selfish people? You would probably say, no, I'm not a selfish person. But actually, built in with that seventh consciousness is selfishness. And the reason for that is it's all about survival. It's the way our brain is wired. It's our default mode to survive. So that seventh consciousness, or your ego, is actually trying to keep you alive, trying to keep you safe. But actually, it's doing a really terrible job of it, because it's making us look at things through, how does that affect me? And what is that to do with me? And, it just helps to make us selfish. So that is why we have to spend a lot of time in meditation, mindfulness, and reflection practices to ensure that that seventh consciousness is not driving us. Of course, it will be there, but we just need to ensure that we check. If you're being mindful of what thoughts come into your head, you're not going to go down the selfish road. But if you're being driven by your subconscious mind, so you're not present in the moment, you're not being mindful, you're not aware, you're just allowing your thoughts to go, then of course that is going to take us down that selfish road. So I could say a lot more, but just to recap, we have the surface level of these consciousness, and the surface level of the consciousness are the six consciousnesses: your eye, your ear, your nose, your sense of touch and sound, and your mind. The deeper consciousness, there are two. Number 7 is this sense of self, the ego consciousness. Next time we'll look at the 8th consciousness. So try to understand that the way that we engage with the world is through these 6 consciousnesses, the surface ones, and all what we take in through those are actually going through, being filtered through this seventh consciousness, which makes us a little bit selfish, which makes us look at everything. How is that? What's that got to do with me? And then they will look at the eighth consciousness.
So understanding these consciousness, of course, they are the part. We have a question from Vikas. He's asking, what does science say on consciousness? Since these are the parts of Buddhism which you were mentioning, but are they also related with the modern science?
Yeah, well, you see, modern science hasn't moved on very well with consciousness. We've moved on a lot in the neuroscience area. We've learned a lot about the brain, but we still haven't learned about consciousness. We haven't really learned how thoughts are generated, how emotions are generated. So science hasn't caught up with Buddhism just yet. So give it a chance. It's only been 2,600 years since Buddha said this, so, give them a bit of chance. But up to now, then there's lots of different debates about consciousness. I'm not sure. You see, you could kind of put this into Freud. So the eighth consciousness we're going to talk about could be your unconscious mind. This seventh consciousness could be the subconscious mind. And your conscious mind could be the first six. So, I mean, that was how I would fit it into what Freud was saying. But it doesn't, the seventh consciousness and subconsciousness don't fully fit together.
So talking about these senses, of course they are there. And when we talk about this ego or our natural understanding, for example, if I say a tree, so a picture is already there in your mind that it's green or the brown is the stem part or the wood part. And we have that for everything. For example, our colleagues, maybe our friends, as soon as they say something, we have the notion or we know few things stored, and from where our ego is coming, that you don't know who I am, you don't know who my father is, and all these other things related to that. So is there any way that we train these senses which are already there, the six senses, and then we make our seventh consciousness more aware? And is there any way, because I also remember of detoxing from these senses, a few practices which I have done. Like I wake up and I don't talk the whole day. I think you would like that if I'm around.
God, I
But
can't believe that.
of course. But now, is there any way that we train these senses and, become more aware?
Yeah, I mean, the way to train your senses is to be more mindful, bring awareness to your senses. Don't just accept. You see, you're talking about a tree and a tree is green, but you've learnt that. You wasn't born with that. Somebody's told you that shape is a tree. That color we call green. So, you've learnt that behavior. And of course, then we have a lot of society teaches us many things. Our parents certainly do, school does, religion does. But if we never stop, and bring awareness to our thought process, so it's not about the outside object, and it's not about this, your senses, your eye, your ear that's picking it up. It's about your consciousness, and it's about bringing awareness to that. And that's what Carl Jung was saying about making the unconscious conscious, because a lot of the time we are unconscious. We are not consciously thinking. So the way to bring awareness to your senses and your way of thinking is through mindfulness. I mean, we can do mindfulness, on a daily basis. So that's how you would do that.
Do you think detox of these senses can add value?
I think you
So,
should ask me that when we do the eighth consciousness, because I think that's more what you're talking about.
okay, interesting. When we are mentioning these senses, Lamaji, they are already there because, for example, if I see a blind person walking, I am seeing a person as at total awareness, because they don't have this most powerful sense which you were talking about, is the eyes, because we see everything through it, and sometimes we don't really pay attention as well, that okay, I have seen that, and then we just move on. It's about the excitement also, when we were talking about in our first session, that going through a different route make your mind more stimulated, because we are seeing new things. However, in our day-to-day travel, it's the same things, and we don't pay really attention towards these things. So talking about this most powerful sense which we have in our senses, is there anything we can do to become more mindful when we are seeing things? As you were suggesting in the first one, that going through new places also make us more aware. The way we take our vacations, we are excited because we go like we're gonna see new things. So, but how about the same in day-to-day lives or your everyday routine?
Yeah, but that's what mindfulness is. Mindfulness really means awareness. So it's actually bringing awareness. And, in the first session, that's what I was saying to you. If you get stuck in a routine, you do the same thing day in, day out, you will stop seeing things. You will stop seeing what's around you because you just take it for granted. So mindfulness practices are about bringing awareness to what you're seeing. Stop believing. Stop believing what your mind is telling you because it's tricking you. It is fooling you the whole time. So, we can't stop and check everything. But what we need to be doing is every now and again checking that, if somebody's walking down the street with blue hair and we look and then we think, oh no, look at that. What an awful person that is. Because we have some sort of bias against blue hair, we should stop. How do we know that that person with blue hair is a bad person? But if we don't stop and catch ourselves and bring awareness to the way we're thinking and the way that that thinking is making us act, then we will constantly have a dislike for people with blue hair. And that person could be a doctor or a nurse or a charity worker or something like that. So mindfulness is a way of bringing that unconscious into the conscious. And we can do that on a regular basis. And actually, Divya did ask a question. She says, how do we quieten the mind consciousness? So if you fully want to do that, then meditation is a way of doing that. But if you want to just do it quickly, then gratitude meditation, just stop a moment and just think, what am I grateful for right at this moment? Because that is going to quieten your mind. That's going to stop your mind being negative and stressed and anxious and bring it into a sense of calm and hopefulness when we're looking at something we appreciate.